Islamic banking as a whole, and what you thought about the bailout policy, with the solution they came up with now. What your opinion is?
That's a different. These are two questions, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what is it? The system that you talked about, the mix of the capitalism and socialism, is it a possible solution or not for the future? Is it going to work out? And what else? The shift of the power. I mean, is it possible in the future, like shifting from the U.S. and all? Although they're trying to be restrictionary.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh
All right. Right.
I'm recording already.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, but please go ahead.
Right. So the first question is on the Islamic banking.
Yes.
Islamic banking has proved to be resilient to this type of crisis because its reliance, this crisis is a product of instruments that rely basically on instruments that are to begin with not allowed in Islamic banking, which is usury and making interest rate based on money. So most of the mortgage-backed securities, the type of instruments we're talking about are not allowed. So the Islamic banking institutions fared very well. That doesn't mean they're insulated from any crisis. They're definitely not insulated from economic crisis that could happen, but they have proven to be resilient.
But now, I mean, what's the impact? I mean, there's an effect all over the world, but let's just talk about the effects of the economic crisis on the Islamic part. What is it?
It depends. The countries that are very strongly linked financially to financial institutions of the West have been affected. The countries that are linked to trade with the West have been affected, like Indonesia, Malaysia, China. The Gulf countries that export oil have been affected because of the drop of oil demand. So different countries have been affected differently depending on the composition of their economies. Almost every country around the world has been affected one way or another.
Alright, if we take the Middle East as in the Gulf countries, they don't really, they don't give up a lot of information about the severeness of the effect of the economic crisis. In your opinion, is it very severe? Or what's the status right now with the oil exports not being on demand as much?
Again, as you said, there are parts of this we don't know because we don't know exactly for a number of countries what the status of their sovereign wealth funds, their long-term savings, what has happened to that. In general, the countries that export gas have fared better than the countries that export oil. But ultimately, it all depends on how they budgeted for the future and what price of oil did they assume. Some countries assumed $70 a barrel, others assumed $50 a barrel, were more conservative, etc. So countries that I would say the more careful, the more conservative a country is in expecting oil prices to be in the future, the more it protects its and hopefully we will learn some lessons for the future so that in boom times we can save more of the wealth for times like these.
And alright, if let's say the Gulf countries, they don't have oil, the oil export is kind of weak right now, and agriculture isn't that big. So what's their third option? Tourism is not as big, but it has a bit of. So what's their option? What do you think?
In the short term, simply to tighten belts and be aware that their sources of revenues have dwindled significantly. In the long term, putting more of that money aside and investing some of it in other sectors that can become productive. Services and other industries are definitely sectors in which Gulf countries, oil-rich countries, especially if they cooperate with countries of the region like Egypt, like Jordan, like Yemen, etc., that are abundant with labor. That complementarity between labor-rich countries and oil-rich countries can create a solid base for economic prosperity in the future.
Well, it's